Welcome in, college football fans. Everybody pile in here. Let's talk about the big news. Welcome to the First and Long College Football Show. I am your co-host, Marcus. Mason, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
Man, it seems like we just can't find news these days in college football to talk about.
Slow show today.
Oof,
Slow show.
man. Sometimes it just comes to you. We talked last night about, hey, what are we going to do with the show? Obviously, we got to talk about the championship and what happened in that. Lo and behold, an hour and a half ago, we find out that Nick Saban is going to be retiring. Just about the biggest possible news broke in college football. And when we're actually really blessed to be going live tonight. We were planning on going live regardless, but I'm ready to talk about it. What are the ramifications of this? And first of all, I think we should start with what was Nick Saban's legacy? What will he be remembered as? Obviously, it's the GOAT, but
I think it's his 9 Mercedes-Benz dealerships.
Maybe so, eventually. But where does he go from here, right? I mean, is he going to run for president? I think he's got a good shot.
No, he is gunning for Tommy Tuberville in that Senate job. That's what he
probably
for
is.
now.
That's only one more way that he can beat Auburn, the final way.
I'm going to take them fucking Tigers down with me.
Yeah.
No, I you know what? He's the GOAT. He was the greatest of all time. 6 titles at Alabama. He had another one at LSU. It's huge news. It's big for college football and college football fans alike. And it opens up a lot of doors for conversation because does anybody remember what Alabama was like before he was there? Because it wasn't very good. It wasn't very good. Most of my early college football days were not very memorable for the Tide. And ever since Nick Saban has came along, he has took that program under his wing and ever really since that first year where he went 7-5, he's totally transformed not only the Alabama Crimson Tide, but college football alike. This guy, people don't really understand the tentacles that he has around things in college football. And I don't think that's going to change. I mean, we've seen him all over the media spaces this past season. And I think he's poised to take over a spot, with ESPN or in that media atmosphere, don't you think?
Well, and I think that there were a lot of signs if you really kind of go back and look at it. We mentioned the $17 million house in Jupiter, Florida that he purchased in the offseason. We talked about that when it happened and said, this might be a sign, and granted, as the season went along, I started thinking, all right, well, maybe he's going to stick around. He gets a really good recruiting class. And it is I mean, he really, up until like today, it seemed like he was going to stay. They just got 2 more recruits. I think it was yesterday, but within the past couple of days. So, he really played until the whistle, I guess you could say. But, there were signs of that. And then also, with him being on the Pat McAfee show once a week, that seemed to me a very natural transition into ESPN and into the TV space. And it was just another point that you could look at and say, well, this was Nick Saban foreshadowing what he is inevitably going to end up doing, probably, or maybe he's, I don't want to say auditioning, because who wouldn't want Nick Saban on your show, whether he's good or bad, right? He brings his clout, brings viewers regardless of how good he is, and he's going to be fine in whatever he wants to do in life. And he could be a CEO if he wants.
Yeah, well, and he essentially is. I mean, as I wasn't joking about the car dealerships, he really does own like 9 of those bad boys. And he's about to open up one of the only Ferrari dealerships in America. So that was part of their trip over the summer. See, there's been several things that have led to this, and I don't know if you just mentioned it. I was just reading something, but his $17 million house he bought in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We said in the offseason, we said there's no way he's buying a $17 million house not to live in it. This is a retirement home. This is, that's what that is. And lo and behold, it looks like it's going to happen a little bit sooner than we thought. But one of the people that obviously in college football today, besides, Nick Saban and your Dan Lannings and your Kirby Smarts, somebody that has a lot of reach and a lot of voice in the college football atmosphere is Coach Prime and Deion Sanders. And I'm going to read you a quote from X that he posted. He said, "Wow, college football just lost the GOAT to retirement. Wow, I knew it would happen one day soon, but not this soon. Much that it chased the GOAT away.
Oh, wow.
Football, let's hold up our mirrors and say honestly what you see."
Hmm.
So that was Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. That was not the Riddler from Batman.
Yeah.
That was that was a Coach Primeism, is what that was. Is he right? Did the game chase away the GOAT?
I beg to differ. I'd be
Shockingly, I don't agree with Coach Prime.
Yeah. I don't think that Nick Saban was definitely like an advocate for everything that has changed in college football since he has been on this run, but he did nothing but adapt. I mean, I don't know that it was he necessarily saw it as anything but another challenge. I don't agree with that, but I do see his point as a head coach in college football. Can you start lobbying for change for head coaches and coaches in general, because they're the ones who are feeling it more than any fan is, more than the players. He's the head coaches and the coaches in general are the ones who are affected. Their lifestyle is affected, and it is very tough on them, but they're paid handsomely to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the game chased him away. He was just in the playoff. He was just in the 14 playoff. I mean, and let's be honest, it was one of the worst teams he's taken to the playoff.
Yeah.
So I think the game was coming to Nick just as much as it ever was.
Hmm.
So I don't, Alabama just had one of their best recruiting classes ever. They just had their most talented team ever. Now, this is going to open the floodgates a bit, because now Alabama, they already had a little bit of an outflux of talent and an influx as well. They brought in players, they lost them, but now they have a whole nother 30-day window, all these players, because their coach was fired. So everything opens right back up. They had extra time after the playoff game. Now it's wide open again. And we'll just have to kind of wait and see how this thing looks. But me and you were talking before the show started. There was some footage that was leaked of Kirby Smart talking to Caleb Downs after the SEC championship game, right?
Yep.
Saying, we'll be in touch, right?
Yep.
And that's not the first time we've seen that type of stuff on the field. It's just Kirby Smart is a high profile guy at a place like Georgia talking to an Alabama player. You're going to hear about it. And this is going to be interesting. It's the most talented roster in all of college football. Who's going to come in and save this thing and hold it together? What's your thoughts on that? I mean, who's right for this job?
That's probably what I'm scratching my head about most.
Who wants to go in behind the GOAT, dude?
And it's, we've already
sucks.
seen it. It's almost like at the end of the coaching cycle, right? And in the hiring cycle, this happens, and
Right.
people have already found their homes, and maybe that's not permanent, because I look at somebody like Mike Elko, and I think that he'd be a great fit. I don't know if Alabama is willing to, if the AD is willing to go out and try and get him before he ends up, officially coaching for Texas A&M. I think he would be a great fit. I think that Dan Lanning makes the most sense for Alabama, but I don't know if Alabama makes sense for Dan Lanning, because let's look at this another way. Why would you want to follow up in Nick Saban's footsteps at Alabama and have to consistently put out at 11 plus win seasons in the SEC that just got a lot harder because of scheduling and because of Oklahoma and Texas joining? I think that if I'm Dan, and he's already come out and said, like, guys, I have the best job in the country, out in Oregon. I get to rule essentially, I'm paraphrasing. If I'm Dan Lanning, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I get to rule the West Coast, right? I have a national brand. I have Nike, and you have all the backing of Phil Nike, and what he wants to do is win a national championship.
Oh, and not to mention all the riches of Scotland because they're getting $100 million a year starting here in a couple years.
Yep. So I think that if I'm Dan Lanning, it doesn't make sense to go to Alabama, but he would be a great fit for Alabama. Obviously, people are going to point to Dabo Swinney. I know a lot of Alabama fans don't want to hear that, but he's also a pretty good fit for Alabama considering he went to school there. And look, that's another. There aren't many coaches who have won multiple national championships in the college football playoff era, right? So he would be a decent fit. Steve Sarkisian makes some sense, but why would you leave Texas? It's kind of like the Oregon situation. I don't know that you can find a better spot. I think that what you have to really look at is in the scope of college football. What is Alabama now that Nick Saban's not there? Is it a top 5 job in college football? I don't know. I don't know that answer is yes, because what makes it a top 5 spot? Or did Nick Saban make it a top 5 spot?
Yeah, did anybody think it was top 5 before he got there? No. I don't think so.
It wasn't top 10. Didn't. It wasn't even a top 10 job, you know. Yeah. All the history, all that stuff, it doesn't geographically, it doesn't pay like geographically that school doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Georgia does because geographically it's in the state of Georgia and there's a hotbed. But Alabama, as good as that state is in football, which, you know, there's some good talent that comes out of it, you've also got to share that state with Auburn. And you've got LSU on the other side of you. Texas is right down the road. I mean,
no offense to our West Coast fans or anything, but there's also, you have to compare living in Oregon or living in Alabama, though. And I mean, I'm a country boy. I'm not from the West Coast, so I'm speaking from no experience here, but I would rather live in Alabama. Right. And there's something to be said for that. And there's no building that has to go on. You know, I mean, he can come in literally right off the rip and bring his system, probably bring some players with him, you know, because obviously the Oregon players will be free to transfer if he leaves, and he can bring some with him. I think it makes a lot of sense. And look, again, I'm no expert on Oregon, never even been to that state. I've had no reason to go to Oregon. I like the Oregon Ducks. I like watching them, but nothing against Oregon. But from what I hear, from what I've heard on a couple of different occasions, and this is all grapevine talk, but I don't know that his family absolutely is in love with being out there. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if it doesn't translate to some talks being had. Alabama was paying Nick Saban $11.4 million a year. Dan Lanning, I know, is not getting paid that because I know Nick Saban was the highest paid. So they've got all the money in the world to pay, and I think it's going to come down to Dan Lanning deciding whether or not he wants to follow up the GOAT. I mean, that's pretty tough stuff. You know, it's like, you know, following up the best act on America's Got Talent and they get the gold buzzer. And it's like, holy shit. Now I got to go do stand-up comedy out here. Like, you know, I'm not going to win. There's no way I can win this. And that's what this job feels like to me. It feels like you're going up after the golden buzzer performance. And it's going to take one hell of a performance and one hell of a strong-headed and strong-minded person to come in and take over that system.
And speaking of strong-headed and strong-minded, doesn't Lane Kiffin make sense then?
I've said it. That's been my one.
Because he does not give a shit. He does not give a shit what the fans think. No. And he might win. He might average 10 wins a season at Bama, but I think that kind of makes sense for both sides in a way.
Yeah. Already familiar with the program, worked for the last regime, won a natty there. You know, it's got talent to pull from at Ole Miss. I mean, this is the best transfer portal class ever, probably. And if you take away the fact they lost Judkins, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But that's been my go-to guy the whole time, because you're right. He doesn't give a damn, dude. He does not give a damn. He's used to being under the pressure. And you talk about winning 10 games, he's doing it at Miss.
Yeah.
Doing it at Ole Miss. I mean, in the SEC West, amongst Nick Saban. Now Nick Saban's gone. You got a brand new coach at A&M. You've got a second-year coach at Auburn.
Well,
Nick
and
Saban
to
can or Coach Kiffin can come in and be the man right off the bat.
Well, and to what gives me pause about some of these coaches is like, man, look at how much they've done in the transfer portal, specifically Lane Kiffin. But if he leaves his school, well, those players now have 30 days to come with him. So that's not really a negative, anymore like it once was. Same thing with Dan Lanning. Another one that I don't think is a great geographic fit, but somebody that I think would be a good fit is Kalen DeBoer. Put that head coach and plant him in Tuscaloosa and put a surrounding cast around him of coaches and coordinators who understand the Southeastern Conference footprint and get Grubbs over, as your offensive coordinator. That's a scary Alabama in my opinion. But it's kind of him, Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian. That's about, as a Georgia fan, those are the only three coaches that go and fill that role. And I say, oh man, they're going to be just as good as ever. Nobody else in America, I think, can fill that role. And without skipping a beat, I guess. Is
What
my
about
point.
Bill Belichick? I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
He's
there
about
you
to
go.
get fired. So.
Golly. That would be
Wouldn't that
pretty
be some
wild.
shit? Alabama gets rid of Nick Saban and brings in Bill Belichick.
Brings in another NFL coach, and he wins 6 more championships. No, yeah, it's a wild time, but I'm super interested to see where this goes and what the recruits think, what his players think, and where, because there's got to be a slide of talent from Alabama. And two, if I'm Alabama as a program, when do you make the hire? Do you wait 30 days or wait till like the 29th day and then make the hire? Or do you bring him in? Do you bring him in right away and try to retain what you've got on the roster? It's tough. And this AD has got his work cut out for him. Look, he's been the AD since 2017, never had to deal with this. Went 7 years, never had to deal with a career defining hire. Well, now here it is. This is going to make or break him.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're watching the show right now, we thank you so much for doing that. And if you would, drop us a comment and give us your opinion on this and tell us what you think. And we hope that you'll subscribe to the channel or at least consider it. We love talking college football year round. And this is just one of the reasons here we are on January 10th. And we're talking, big time college football. And as relevant as if the season was going on. Kind of just close up on Nick Saban there. He led the Tide to 9 Southeastern Conference championships, won his first national title at Alabama with the 14-0 season in 2009. And titles came again in 11, 12, 15, 17, and 20. He also won the SEC with LSU in 2001 and 2003 and a national title over there. Just the GOAT, absolute GOAT until further notice. 297 and 71 as a college head coach, period.
Yeah.
And that's at Toledo, Michigan State, LSU, and Alabama. He is the greatest coaches right now and the greatest of all time, no doubt about that. Let's dive into a couple other things that we've got going on. Where you want to go next? Let's talk about our transfer portal stuff, shall we?
Let's do it.
Well, I feel like we almost are talking about this in vain because I feel like this information is about to change so much with the Alabama news. You already had a couple of Alabama guys trending out before the playoff game. But one guy that kind of caught my attention was on January 7th. There was a guy named Jake Pope that is transferring out of Alabama. He's a safety, a 4-star guy that came in the class. Let's see, it was class of
22.
22.
Yeah. He came out of that Grayson High School actually. And it was between them and Georgia,
Yeah.
Georgia missed out on him. He hadn't seen the field a bit. but I know he was a pretty big time recruit coming out.
He was Buford, is what it is.
Was it Buford? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was
Another Buford guy that Georgia swings and whiffs on.
Yeah.
And the last place he visited unofficially before transferring or before signing with Alabama was Georgia. But I just wanted to kind of go over some of these rankings real quick too. We got Ole Miss in first. Second, we got Texas A&M. Elko's doing a good job getting some talent into Texas A&M, dude.
Yeah.
Really, really picking up some traction on the transfer portal trail. You got Colorado taking up third, Louisville, Florida State, Missouri, USC, South Carolina, NC State, and TCU rounding out your top 10 there. Any comments on those? Some of these guys, a lot of these guys are 3-star talent. Not to say that 3-star talents can't contribute on Saturday, but if I listed all you guys every 3-star, then we'd be here all night, right?
Yeah, and one that probably hasn't been factored into those rankings is LSU transfer running back Logan Diggs. We've seen him a lot, and he's announced as of 3 hours ago he's going to go to Ole Miss too. So that's another big get for Lane Kiffin.
Well,
and unexpected. That's one that kind of came out of the blue.
Well, and part of the reason that happened was because of Quinshon Judkins leaving Ole Miss. So now it's saying that Ole Miss or that Quinshon Judkins has committed to Ohio State.
Right.
So he's going to be playing football at Ohio State. Another one of those Alabama guys that I was trying to think of just a minute ago that transferred out was Roydell Williams. Did you see that?
I did not.
The running back has decided, and it looks like we're starting to see some more of these because here's 2 more Alabama players that have popped onto this list. So I'm seeing 4, 5. There's 5 of them just in the last few days from Alabama.
Okay.
So maybe some guys knew something was coming. It was probably more likely just roster movement, personnel movement that goes on with all these big teams. But and I do see there where Logan Diggs has committed to Ole Miss. As far as Ole Miss is concerned, man, they were putting together one of the best transfer portal classes ever. And then with Judkins leaving, I mean, that was a huge blow, dude. That's probably the best player on that offense, don't you think?
No, I 100% think that he's the best,
Yeah. That hurt.
I mean, it's one of those things. I don't really know if the value from roster management perspective, from an NIL perspective, I don't know that his value was worth it over Bentley, or some other running back. At a running back position, Judkins is probably, over $500,000, I would think, is his NIL value. And actually, I've got it here on 3 at $528,000. Maybe if you're Ole Miss, you say, hey, we could use that money elsewhere to bring in somebody like, I'm sure that they're trying to get somebody like Evan Stewart. It looks like he's going to end up at Oregon. But yeah, maybe it's allocating of resources in some way. I know that Quinshon Judkins ends up at Ohio State. Ohio State, I'm sure, was not happy to have to pay this guy to come in, but I think that it's necessary. And I think you're going to start seeing Ohio State move more towards a ground and pound type of offense, which is interesting considering the wide receivers that they have. It's interesting to think about, but ultimately, yeah, Quinshon Judkins, you kind of have to count that against Ole Miss in the transfer portal, right? Like, do you count transfers out as a negative? It should be weighted, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it definitely should be. I mean, that's part of it. They go and they come, and that happens with all the big programs that are bringing in big talent. The difference is Ole Miss is not recruiting on a high level from the high school ranks.
Yeah.
So losing somebody like that who's already been in the system is a really, really big deal. I feel like it hurts that much more just because of the fact that now your transfers are great, dude. Transfers are great, but then you're bringing in a guy into a new system, and you only get 1 year or 2 years with a max.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the problem with that system. But some would argue you ain't getting that much time with them anyway if they don't play right off the bat. So it's kind of a what comes first, the chicken or the egg, in that type situation. But let's talk about the national championship game.
Oh yeah, that did
Totally
happen.
we totally glossed over that sucker. Michigan wins the national championship over Washington. The Cinderella story, unfortunately, did not come to full fruition with the Washington Huskies. Look, it got, honestly, me and you, we both predicted Washington to win, as the majority of people did, but unapologetically, because I'm going to tell you something. I don't feel bad for Washington at all. They had every chance in the world to win this game.
They did.
Every chance in the world to win this game. It was really odd to see Michael Penix that inaccurate. I haven't, even when he was hurt halfway through the season, I don't ever recall him being that inaccurate in a football game. Very, very disappointing. And it looked like from the very beginning of the game, it looked like it was about to be a freaking blowout, dude. Looked like they were about to stomp their ass. And then there was some hope in the middle there. And it was like, okay, wait a minute. It's 14-10 at halftime. Like this, or excuse me, 17-10. There's a chance. There's a chance here. And Washington just couldn't make a play. Who knew that in the first half of the game, leading 17-10, Michigan wouldn't need to score another point in the whole game?
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. But Michigan showed an ability to not blitz and still get pressure on the quarterback. And that's what we talked about on the show, that it was going to be, that was going to be a big deal for Michigan. And the reason that, or at least part of the reason that Michael Penix struggled the way he did, is because there was maize and blue all around him. And they didn't always sack him, but they were always around, and they didn't have to bring numbers to do that. And so therefore they were backing up into zone coverages and just sitting back there and reading the quarterback's eyes and just not giving up the huge play. What was your takeaways from the game? Because it felt like it just kind of went exactly how we thought, except it was like our keys to the victory for Michigan just completely came to fruition.
Yeah. And Washington had the opportunities, but
yeah,
I hate to put it all on Penix. He missed the throws that they needed him to make. If he was on like he was against Texas, I think that Washington might have won this game. It's tough to say that, with revisionist history, but I think that initially that first drive, he ends up missing McMillan in the end zone, right? Overthrew him. It would have been a contested catch, but a better ball probably ends up in a touchdown. And then in that second half, they're driving down by 7. They're not able to connect on a touchdown. I think that was the one to a Dunze where he got turned around, if I'm not mistaken. And then they open up, the second half with the ball. Michigan stops them. I mean, it was just, they had the opportunities there. Certainly the refs didn't do them any favors. There were a lot, I think, as someone who's a Georgia fan and not a fan of either of these teams, it's easy to say that Michigan had more calls that went their way than Washington did, right? There were some missed calls that would have gone against Michigan, but at the end of the day, I do think that the better team won, and I told you in the preview that I thought that Michigan is a better team. I just felt that that Washington had matchups, that they could take advantage of and exploit Michigan in. And I think everybody did their job. I thought that the defense for Washington did a great job, in particular in that second and third quarter, to give their team an opportunity to win. And Penix didn't come through. He didn't deliver like we had seen him do in weeks prior. He looked like that Penix that we saw in the middle part of the season, where he might have been battling injury or something. But it was a little bit of a disappointment. for certainly for Washington, but just for college football as a whole, I thought it was a slightly underwhelming ending to the game. The middle 2 quarters of the game were excellent. I was very much enjoying those, but it just seemed like I said, Penix wasn't able to connect, and it kind of took them out of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it like you said, I hate to put it on Penix all because I it's a team sport, but they had their opportunities, bro. I mean, there's just absolutely no doubt about that, and couldn't capitalize. And I don't know if it was the big stage or what was going on, but it was a tough performance for your boy Penix. What else we want to cover today, Mason? I think that's about all we got for today.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
We just wanted to come out here and give you guys a rapid reaction on the Nick Saban thing and get something to cut up and put on the channel. I wanted to tell everybody, though, we're going to be going live every Wednesday at 7:00. That's what we're doing. The show is going to be once a week, Wednesday at 7:00, unless we need to come on here and do some kind of emergency pod or something like that. Very possible, especially with this Alabama situation going on. So it's important that you hit the subscribe button and whenever we're going live, so you can see what's going on, and we'll bring you all the news as it comes up. And we certainly appreciate everybody tuning in. This is episode number 31, and we will be doing episode number 32 next Wednesday, unless something comes up between now and then. For First and Long College Football Show, I'm Marcus. That's Mason. We're signing out. Have a good night.
Thanks. Have a good night, y'all.